Hello, this is Dennis Wisco, your host of the Wisco Weekly podcast. I wanted to just take a moment to share some thoughts with you. When I first started the Wisco Weekly podcast, the mission was to enlighten listeners about how car dealers can be more customer-centric and how customers can better manage their car buying expectations. This podcast truly became the best way for me to be on both sides for the dealer and for the customer in order to bring about a higher good, and that being the customer experience or bettering the customer experience. The first season admittedly or obviously was a pilot, and I learned many things along the way. I shared actual content from conversations I was having with dealers. I shared actual content from clients, my clients that is, who were seeking advice on buying, selling, maintaining, and modifying their cars. And I'm also extremely grateful to have had a few guests like Kent Solomon, the Director of Business Development at C4 Analytics, a company who has quickly demonstrated that they are a leader in the digital space. I interviewed Kiki Sin, who is a digital consultant at Shift Digital and specifically oversees the FCA account. Along with her being not only female, she is minority and young, and so she brings some interesting insight and has some interesting experience in the car business. And I also interviewed in his household, in his own home, former professional basketball player Adam Parada, who recently joined the car business as a sales professional at a Nissan dealership, Corona Nissan, which is part of the Larry H. Miller Auto Group. As my team and I were preparing for season 2, we reflected on all the dealer and customer stories, some that were shared through the podcast and others that did not make the final cut. And the reality of our efforts became somewhat scary as we realized that there is a long uphill road ahead of us filled with many roadblocks and speed bumps. There are 3 main buckets that I can group the challenges that currently exist for businesses meeting the needs of the customer. The first bucket can be labeled the same old, same old. And as you guessed, this is an institutional mentality of businesses who just don't think in these modern day times. They think more traditionally. And not only that, they have an organization that supports this mentality. An example of this is an employer who houses a staff of employees who are all non-tech savvy individuals. The second bucket are those organizations who have one foot in and one foot out. There's an acknowledgement of change on their end, and furthermore, that they believe that change needs to happen. They probably even have thought of legitimate steps to implement. However, it's these organizations that are fearful and non-committal, and this fear of change is perhaps because of their own self-interest and preservation, and therefore they stay in this perpetual state of a stalemate. The third bucket and final bucket are those organizations who lack ideas. They've done their reading, they've listened to webinars, and they've probably have done the math on how their organization can grow if they implemented a new digital strategy. However, it has become so much about the math and the probability that they lack the actual ideas to implement something. And it's really this last bucket of challenges that I will be focusing on in season 2. Before we start with our first guest for season 2, I do want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Blue Digital Marketing. Blue Digital Marketing is ran by 2 introverted individuals, both accomplished in their own regards. One is a seasoned developer, the other is a content writer. And where they differ amongst all other agencies is because they are introverted, they just want you to tell them what to do, and they will execute it. This is a mantra that they go by, which is not the mantra that one of their partners, who is also my wife, we do not live by that in the household, as she tells me what to do. But check out bluedigitalmarketing.com for your website, for your social media, for any custom development needs. They work with organizations large and small. They have both been part of organizations where they have built up the organization in such a way that they were eventually bought off by a bigger organization. So they do know what they're doing. Check them out, bluedigitalmarketing.com, BLU digitalmarketing.com. So please tune in every Tuesday and Thursday for the Wisco Weekly podcast. And if you believe we are doing great work, then I ask for nothing more than to support us by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to our podcast. A brand new addition to this season 2 is we will also have a YouTube channel, so you can check out Wisco Weekly podcast through YouTube and see some of the video footage that we'll be posting on there this season. So without further ado, here is episode 1 of season 2 of the Wisco Weekly podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Brown chicken, brown cow. What's going on, listeners? This is Dennis Wisco, your host of the Wisco Weekly podcast. Welcome to season 2. There's lots of great things and interesting things that have been going on already this season. Some of the new things, though, that are coming up to you, in addition to a lot of the guests I'm bringing in, especially the one here today, I also want to introduce to you a co-host by the name of Kelly Cruz. Kelly's not only a good friend of mine, but she works in wealth management and estate planning. She is a habitual leaser herself, and she's just going to bring a great insight and she's going to keep me in check, I'm sure, throughout this season. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podcast co-host Kelly Cruz.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here for season 2.
I'm sure you are, and I'm sure you're excited about all the interesting things that have already happened in season 2.
There's always something interesting with you, Wisco.
See this, and this is why she's on the show here. So Kelly, tell our listeners here something interesting about yourself.
This is always a tough one. What's interesting to people out there? Let's see. I can give you a couple completely unrelated.
Unrelated to what?
2 things that are interesting that are unrelated.
Okay.
So it's going to seem like it doesn't go together. Let's see. So my first gig, I guess, in the entertainment industry, other than my co-hosting gig here, would be a country music video that I was in a while back. So
were you the like one of the dancers, like the?
No, not dancing, not singing. So I probably wasn't all that much of a star in the video.
Okay. What were you doing in the video? What was your role?
It was a little mini acting gig in a Shadazy video. So I think I had a whole 15 seconds of putting a yellow ribbon on a tree. So keep an eye out for that one.
Okay.
So hopefully I have more success here today.
Okay, so you were in a music video of Shadazy?
Yes, it was a country music group.
Okay. And the second interesting tidbit about yourself?
I guess with going other things that I do habitually would be going to Disneyland. Leasing and going to Disneyland.
Leasing and going to Disneyland. Yeah, you are a frequent habitual visitor to Disneyland. What is it about Disneyland? You know this. I was born and raised in Anaheim, close to Disneyland, stone's throw away. There was even one year, it was New Year's, or it was New Year's Eve, and it turned into New Year's. And literally, as we were watching on TV the countdown at Disneyland, a couple buddies of mine, we left our house at like 12:30 and went over to Disneyland. Got there like at 12:40. We snuck in through the exit.
Shh, don't tell anyone.
Yeah, I know. Well,
can't do that these days.
Well, you're an attorney, statute of limitations, right? I'm clear, right? I mean, this is like literally 20 years ago or something. But yeah, we snuck into Disneyland and probably spent maybe 40 minutes there. Then we left. But again, because I grew up next to it, I'm not a huge fan of it. My wife is a fan of it. But what's been your interest in Disneyland?
I guess you could say I kind of grew up here as well, but I've loved everything related to Disney since I was little, Disney movies, Disney characters. And so it's just something fun to go. And they do say it's the happiest place on earth. So I don't know, we somehow have fun every time we go. And now we get to watch the magic on the kids' faces. So
okay,
it's a new phase.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Kelly Cruz, again, she'll be joining us and she'll give us some reports from Disneyland. And I'm sure people can live vicariously through her. Let's move on to the episode here, and I'm excited to introduce to you guys a guest that I have had the chance to meet and interact with a few times now already. I found him initially on Facebook through some of his pictures, and just wanted to bring him on here as not only is he a photographer, but he also works in the auto business. Let me start with his introduction here. Look up the name Hunter Swift, and you'll see the brand of an individual whose image matches the smoothness of his name. Hunter Swift. What comes to mind? He's a father of 3, an avid automotive photographer, and a consummate business professional. His LinkedIn profile is decorated with results and responsibilities, which has culminated in 36 personal recommendations. Hunter Swift. If you follow his Instagram, there is a particular appeal about his pictures, which makes you ask, what is it about these pictures that I'm drawn to? We have all seen thousands of side profile shots, rolling shots, landscape shots, but for some reason, you'll still want to scroll through all 4,255 posts of his. Hunter Swift. They say the harder you work, the luckier you get. And as such, Hunter Swift became Marriott's 1 millionth app user, in which he was rewarded with 1 million points. From Hawaii to Texas, from San Diego to Costa Rica, from Los Angeles to Anaheim, to the 10th of a decimal point, Hunter used all 1 million points. These traveling experiences, coupled with his resume and his photography passion, paint the picture of an individual who has both substance and style. He's a graduate of Pepperdine University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podcast, Hunter Swift.
Wow, thank you. That was probably one of the best introductions that I've received. I don't want to be morbid or anything, but if I ever died, that would be a perfect eulogy.
Well, I will. Let's schedule that. I'll get on my calendar,
not
please.
Not for any time soon.
I hope
Hopefully
not. For
not.
any
That was
time
great.
soon.
Thank you, though.
Well, I thank you for being on the show here. I think this is going to be a great. There will be a lot of great content for customers and for dealers as well. You have these two passions and responsibilities of photography and just working in the automotive business, specifically at Dealer Socket, that I want to bring to light to all the listeners out there. And I think one of the things I'd like to start off with that would be very interesting to customers who aren't so familiar with dealer operations is how dealers collect and use customer information. So obviously there's many times where customers will fill out a web lead, they might fill out a credit application online, or they're actually in the store. Maybe they're in the service department, and all that information, be it on their vehicle or personal information, is being logged. You work at Dealer Socket, a CRM company. Not only do you work there, but you are very much an expert, and you have a thirst of knowledge when it comes to CRMs. So in general, let's start with this. How would you rate dealerships across the board in their ability to use this customer data?
Yeah, so customer data, I think, is really important to businesses these days. When you look at a CRM specifically on how a dealership would use it, the CRM, for people that don't understand, is a customer relationship management tool. It's a tool to help dealers or businesses manage their customers. And so the more data that's into the CRM, the better the dealership can provide a better experience for the customer. And so a lot of times the customer is very reluctant on providing information like a valid email address or any additional information that they're requesting. But the purpose of it is to provide a better experience through relevant marketing. So for a perfect example, dealerships would get an email address. Historically, they would just send out a blast every time they're having a sale. If a dealership uses data, they can actually market a specific message for the right time, for the right purpose, to the right person. And so it's improving that experience because, too many times you just bought a car and then next you receive a $500 off coupon. And you're like, well, wait a minute, that was the lowest he told me. And then you look at the dealership, or maybe they're not using the data correctly, and you start getting marketing for vehicles that maybe you don't own, or it's not relevant to you. So one of the things that we're trying to do a lot at DealerStock is really help dealers manage that data so that they can provide a better experience, right? Catered marketing, relevant information. If you're on our website and you're looking at any car, if you are consistently going back to a particular type of car, the data would actually change how we market it to you. And so you start getting information that's relevant to you.
And does this kind of fall more on the responsibility of management of the dealership or the salesperson so as to, read and interpret the data and then eventually do something with it? Because I guess it's a leading question in a way, because I see it in a lot of ways that I don't think salespeople would either take the time or even know how to process that information.
Yeah. So the job of the technology is to kind of tee it up for the sales rep. So the sales rep just might get like a to-do that says, hey, call this person. They don't necessarily know kind of why or the technology behind it, but we've looked at the particular data and say this particular customer, is at the end of their lease. It looks like they're getting ready to go over their miles. So we think that we should call that customer and try to get them into a new car before they get over miles and get into the over lease penalties. So if they look kind of at the notes or the purpose of the call, it'll kind of make sense to them. But we are on the back end, we're generating that information and trying to take all the heavy lifting out. So the salesperson just comes in, they see their calls, and it might be, a happy birthday call. It might be an equity call. It might be a lease return call. It might be somebody that just bought a car and we want to, ask them how it's going, right? Mm-hmm. So the technology enables the salesperson to be a better salesperson and, have a better experience because it's providing them with the data that's going to make them be successful.
Now, so, a lot of times I see the CRM program for dealerships being kind of this just a very systematic process, right? They're collecting names, addresses, payment information, and it's going into this black abyss, and eventually they'll siphon out all the emails, run a monthly email campaign, and then that's about it. It doesn't seem to be the case that there is a emphasis on the fact that with so much data they have now that you can't really treat your customers to be this homogeneous group of customers anymore. You have to kind of break them out.
Yep.
I remember watching a video of yours on LinkedIn where you were talking about the definition of what CRM means. I don't know if it was either to you or in general, but can you elaborate on that definition of CRM?
Absolutely. So I think for the most companies that use the CRM, the focus has always been on the customer. And one of the things that I kind of have been pushing is to use the CRM and kind of focus on the R of CRM, which stands for relationship. It can stand for repeat business. It could stand for referrals. The relationship is the important part of any type of experience. The technology is helping me, keep that relationship. And a couple examples: if I tell you that I'm going to call you on Thursday, the CRM will prompt me that I call you on that, right? And keep that relationship. If you tell me that, hey, I don't want to be called because I'm going to be at work, to text me, the system is going to notify me to make sure that I'm reaching out to the way that you want to be communicated to. If you are interested in a particular vehicle, right? So the relationship is to make sure, or the focus on the relationship is to make sure that I'm not dropping the ball at all, and that you have the feeling that I really care about you, right? I'm going to put in the notes that you're a particular, fan of this or a car guy or whatever, so that when we have that second conversation, right, it's going to remind me of that, and it's going to be like, well, this guy really remembered who I was. You remember my wife, things like that. We can even take it even farther when you look at other industries like Facebook, right? Facebook uses similar technology to help relationships when it's your birthday. I'm sure you've had people wish you happy birthday on Facebook.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes you feel pretty good, right? You're seeing people that you haven't talked to in a long time, high school friends, whatever, that are wishing you happy birthday. You're like, man, this person remembered it was my birthday.
Yeah, lots of strangers actually come out of the woodworks.
Yeah, so it's not, I don't want to discredit any of your friends who actually remember your birthday and call you, but it's the technology, right, that is helping you to be a better, friend or a better, family member. And so that's another example of how companies are using technology to help with the relationships. And so as companies and dealerships are looking more of the why and trying to say, look, I'm not just using the CRM just to manage this customer and the lead, but really it's about the relationship. And you start looking in the bigger picture, and you start thinking about, whoa, the customer experience is really the most important part of the car buying experience. And most people, when you talk to them about the car buying process, they don't like it. It's something that, takes too long. They don't trust the dealer. They kind of dread it. But at the same time, there's a huge opportunity as a dealer to improve by making a really great experience. And if they can make a great experience, one, they can actually make more money or charge more for that experience. And the customer is actually is paying more, but having a higher customer satisfaction. Now, obviously your customers want to make sure that, or the consumer wants to get a good deal. The dealership wants to make good money. And I want to make sure that there's not the confusion of the dealerships trying to take advantage of somebody in that aspect. But there are a lot of examples of companies that maybe a hotel like Ritz-Carlton or maybe a nice restaurant that you're paying more for that experience, right? A Mexican place that I know has really good Mexican food, and it's a hole in the wall, and there's a really nice Mexican food. They're very similar, but you go there for the ambiance and for the experience. And so that's kind of what dealers and different companies, even like Nordstrom's or these different companies, where they charge more, but they're providing a better experience. And so obviously in the car buying process, the consumer has been very focused on the price. What is my best price? They shop dealerships. What's my best price? If the dealership can improve the overall customer experience, there's more of a meeting in the middle, right? The customer is willing to pay a little bit more for the experience, where the dealership's making more profit because they're offering a better experience, and the customers are coming back. They're coming into service. They're sending referrals and things like that.
Clarify a little bit more what you mean by customer experience, because I do think that it's kind of mislabeled that customer experience equates to customer service. So all you have to really do is put on a smile, say hello, and open doors, offer water, kind of thing, and that's customer experience.
Yeah.
That's not what you're talking about though here.
Yeah, it's a little bit more deeper in regards to the fact of trying to create an experience that's memorable. If you look at like review sites like Yelp or Google, the people that usually give reviews are people who had an experience that they weren't expecting, right? So either it's, I was expecting this to be a nice restaurant and it wasn't. I'm upset that I paid a lot of money and it wasn't this experience, so I'm going to give a review. Or it's the times where they go in expecting, just average work and it's exceptional, right? That difference right there, that change of unexpected, when they're not expecting it, is what needs to occur at any interaction to improve the customer experience. You want to wow them, right? You want to make a memorable experience. If you can make a memorable experience, if you can make them feel, welcomed, or if you can make them feel comfortable, they will tell their friends. They will come back and do service with them. If you're just a price conscious consumer and you just want the best price, and you go in and you haggle them, and you just it's a back and forth, you might get an okay deal. But I can guarantee you that time and that experience probably tainted that relationship, that you might never go back to the dealership again. And so the dealership knows that, because there's a lot of competition around selling the exact same vehicle for pretty much the exact same price just down the street. So I talk to dealers all the time and I say, well, what are you doing to stand out from your competitors, right? And it can't always be that we're the lowest, right? The lowest price. So they have to start looking at, okay, well, how can I improve the overall experience? And things that the dealerships are starting to do more now revolves around loyalty, right? We are very loyal as a consumers to hotels, to credit cards, and to airlines. Well, why do we always choose the same airlines, same credit card? Because they give us points, right? We were talking about the Marriott points, right? Where you have these points and you're building them up and you can go places. And so there's a reason why I continue to go to the same place. For a dealership or different companies, there's not always a benefit for them to continue to buy cars from them. Now, through the OEM, through like Chevy, right, they have a loyalty program, but a dealership can look at that experience and say, look, we want to have a good experience so that they will continue to come back. Perfect example is, once they've bought a car, I want to get them into service. So if there's something that I can do to make a good experience, they're going to come in for service. And if the consumer doesn't feel like every time I talk to them, I'm trying to sell them, or, a lot of times what happens is somebody's going to buy a car, they're going to go and visit a dealership and kind of look at it, go on a test drive. The salesperson is commission-based and wants you to buy a car. Most consumers aren't just laydowns anymore, right? They want to do a lot of research. And that's a clash there as well, because the salesperson doesn't want to waste his time on people that are just kicking tires, but the consumers are kicking tires more because they want to make the right decision. Right. So as companies or dealerships go toward to more of like welcoming that, right, and allowing the customer and maybe providing information to not necessarily that they feel like if I go into a dealership, they're going to try to close me. And if the salesperson, like, if I say, oh, I'm just looking, he doesn't go get the manager. Now the manager comes out and he tries to close me. Like, give me a leash, right? Give me some distance that allow me to do this research. And if you provide a good experience, right? If you give me the information that I need, there's more likely that I'm going to come back. I've been with other dealerships where I've bought in cars and I've had such a bad experience with them. I actually end up buying the car from them, but I nickel and dime them on the price because I don't want them to make any money, right? Where there's other places that I've gone that I made an instant connection to the person. I felt welcomed. A perfect example, a dealership, as I submitted a lead, the manager called me, right? And this was even before I came in. And he introduced himself on the call and says, hey, I'm just confirming your appointment, but I wanted to introduce. And I just remember thinking that normally the manager gets introduced after ends with when we're already, frustrated and I'm getting ready to leave, then he comes in. Or sometimes you don't even see the manager, right? The salesperson leaves me for a couple of minutes while they go talk to the manager. And so I already knew that I had that connection with the manager. And he even made a comment that says, look, if you're not getting the service that you need, or if that salesperson's not answering, tell me, right? And so I felt like I had that relationship. When I got inside the office, he came out and he shook my hand. And I just was like, well, it was a really great thing. Now, that could just be a process that they do for everything. And it doesn't mean that I'm any special than anyone else. But it made that experience special, and I ended up buying the car there, right?
Yeah. So, I think one of the things that could be interesting, and Kelly, like especially for you, first off, since you're a habitual leaser, have you experienced any notable customer experiences at a dealership yourself?
It's funny that you should ask, because I recently leased a new car, so I have recent experiences. And as you were talking about customer service, Hunter, I was thinking about this. So went through the car leasing process, had some things that I didn't love about the process. And I usually don't leave reviews, but in this case,
You left a review?
The salesperson and the finance person both said, we'd really appreciate if you could leave a review. So I'm trying to be better about actually doing it. But the one thing that I had noted that I wasn't very happy about was some misinformation that I received, and I realized after I had already signed on the dotted line. They followed up with a call from the Acura headquarters, and then the manager from Acura actually called me to say, hey, we heard this was an issue, what happened? And he said, we'll go ahead and not adjust the price, but basically when you come back in, they had told me they would waive up to a certain amount of overage on miles. And so he's like, we'll send you an email and make a note. When you bring back your lease, we'll waive that amount because we gave you misinformation. So I was pretty impressed that they not only took the time to follow up, but then were willing to do something about it, because they could have ignored it. They already closed the deal. So,
now is that, were they looking at your data though, or was like, tell me more about how that transpired. Like, what was the mess up on there?
So again, I think in talking about the amount of miles per year, they had told me that when you come back, you could they would waive up to like 7,500 miles or something. But It turned out that they up to 7,500 miles, but they'll only waive half of it. And so I may have made a different deal or gotten more miles per month. But it was a survey that I filled out, and it was from the survey that, again, I think it was more, like Acura headquarters or whatever, someone completely unrelated to the physical dealership called. That person called the Acura dealership directly to tell them customer's unhappy, and then that's when the manager called. So
now, I think one of the things that I can almost start to see happen, and I don't know if you see this through some of the dealers you interact with, Hunter, is, because the CRM has been in place, you have all this data in there, it's streamlining the process. I could also see then dealerships moving to a model where they're removing commission-based salespeople and going more towards hourly.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you see that happening? Is that supposed to is that a good thing, bad thing? Would there?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen some dealerships that do that. I think at the end of the day, you want to make sure that, as more and more companies or dealerships are kind of getting away from the typical car sales, they're trying to become more of like the Apple store. Like, the people that are at the Apple store, they're salespeople, right? They're selling Apple products, but they're not called Apple salesmen. They call them Apple geniuses, right? Mm-hmm. We're seeing that to where, they're no longer sales reps. They're, consultants or experts or things like that. I don't know if that necessarily is the right thing, because at the end of the day, they are trying to sell a car, right? Yeah. Commission does allow incentive for salespeople to do their job and to sell cars, where if it's just kind of a guarantee, sometimes you see a lack of performance, right? Because they know that they're going to get the same exact, pay regardless of their performance. So I think it's kind of in between. There has to be some type of benefit to sell a car, but
are there? I mean, on your guys' end, are there any other tools in place that would almost like, help out? Because I do see one of the changes happening, that there are more hourly salespeople coming on board. So then, I think the question I'm always left with, and to a certain extent, it actually works out better. It works out better for my advantage. When I broker deals, is I now know more than the salesperson. However, I also don't have access to data that they have.
Yep.
Is there some additional services or products that that dealerships have available to them so that they can mine better data?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of talking on two subjects now. So let me just finish the other one when we're talking about the people. Right now, on the sales side, there's a separation between a salesperson and maybe somebody that's maybe in the internet department. And when you call and you submit a lead, you're going to go to the internet department, and the internet department will talk about monthly payments and talk about price and things like that, because they know when you submit a lead, likelihood you're competing with another dealership. So those people are salespeople, but they're given a little bit more information, a little bit more authority to kind of desk deals. Salespeople have kind of been just that front line, and really all they do is take ups from the people that walk in the door. They do the test drives, and then they get the manager involved. And it used to be very separated, but now almost every single consumer in some way or another has done some research online. And so I see that typical salesperson either kind of getting that position kind of evaporating or kind of evolving into something that does more. Now, one of the things that it can do more is, why do we have to get the manager involved, right, to desk the deal? Why can't that person? Well, the first reason is the sales management will say, well, I don't want my salespeople to be giving away price, right? So some of the technology that we have allows the sales manager or the dealership to lock in the sell price or kind of the gross on that particular vehicle, and then send it to the salesperson, and then the salesperson can kind of help that customer and kind of negotiate the deal. So one, you're empowering that salesperson, but they're not giving away anything that they shouldn't. That same technology, we've actually applied it to websites through a tool called Precise Price, that allows the consumer to make their own deal and kind of edit their deal. And so it's called Precise Price, and one of the things that it does, and it's something similar that you might see on like a mortgage site or any type of financial site, or like a payment calculator. The problem with a payment calculator, it's very generic, right? You want a $50,000 loan for 60 months. It's this amount, right? But what it doesn't calculate is tax, license, registration. Doesn't calculate your APR and all that other stuff. What we've done is taken the same tool that the sales managers are desking the deals with, and allowing them to, again, lock in the selling price, but then give it to the customer that they can make the adjustments of the term, the down payment, the monthly payment, any add-ons that they want, and see a precise price. Now, what we're doing, again, trying to improve the overall experience and trying to help with the transparency and the trust for the dealers, is we are now providing more information to the customer so that they can kind of desk that deal. Now, they go through this 10-step process, and at the end, they have the ability to fill out a form, and it would submit it into the CRM. But if, let's say, they don't want to provide that information, we give a personalized URL that they can text to themselves or email or just keep, so that when they do come in, they can say, oh, I've already desked my deal. Here it is. And it speeds up the process.
Does a dealer also, are they privy to that URL as well? Or
yeah, so they would just take that code and they put it into the CRM, and it would pull up that deal that the customer desked.
Okay, because I was going to say, to kind of argue the side of the dealership, I will see them. That would be very unsettling if all of a sudden a customer filled out all this information and they weren't able to see that information.
So that's what's happening now, though. The majority of the customers, right, that are submitting leads say, hey, I'm interested in this red car. And then the guy calls him up and his first question is, what color car are you? And they're like, I just submitted that information. So that's already happening now. And so with this, what it's doing is making sure that the price that the customer sees is the price that the customer, and not just a price, but the actual deal can come in. It speeds up the time, which is, again, the number one frustration that car buying or people who buy cars have, because it's already desked. The other thing that happens, and we talk about kind of the experiences, once we've negotiated on the price and we've made that handshake, usually the stress is done. Okay, good, we made that decision. We go into the F&I department and they start printing out the contract, and then they start upselling us low jack, service contract, different things. And you're like, wait a minute, I didn't, those things are important to me, but like I'm already $100 more than what I wanted, and I just can't afford it. On that precise price, they can actually add F&I products as well, so they can see, well, what's gap insurance. They can get information on it, and they can click on it, and they can see that it only adjusts their payment $5. You can see what it is versus like, oh, does that make sense? Like
how long does that? How long is it? You said 10 steps? Is that literally what it is, or are you speak? And so I guess on average, how long does a customer go through that process online then?
So it goes anywhere from about 2 to 3 minutes. So not only are you, well, first you're trying to find the vehicle that you want. And again, when we talk about the transparency, this is kind of the future. I mean, dealers are using it now, but the alternative, what a lot of websites have right now is when they have the selling price, or like the MSRP, the selling price isn't usually not shown. And it says something like click here for e-price or click here for sell price. They click on it thinking that they're going to get the price, but instead they get a form. They fill out the form thinking they're going to get the price. They fill out the form, and then it says somebody's going to contact you. And
it's always one step more.
And they're like, wait a minute, I just wanted, I didn't want to submit a lead. I just wanted the price. So we kind of trick the customer, right? This way, we're actually providing that customer the information so they can click on precise price. They can make some adjustments with the down payment and the monthly payment and see what that is. But then they can go, the next screen is asking, do they have a vehicle, right? So they're able to input, do trade evaluation. The next step, they actually can do their credit so they can get pre-approved. So again, that's another step that will speed up the process. Then they can go on all of their add-ons. So anything like gap insurance or the service contract, and then they get their payment. So maybe 2 to 3 minutes max, they get that all that information, which normally would take 10, 20, up to an hour at a dealership. And again, when you go to the dealership, they're going to present you numbers that are high, and you are going to have an expectation that's low, and you're going to go back and forth and negotiate and sometimes meet in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. And the other part that people don't like about the car buying process is you don't really know if you got a good deal. And if you came in looking for a $500 payment and you walk out with a $700 payment, the first thing that you're going to think about is, man, this dealership took advantage of me, right? You have the buyer's remorse. I paid too much for it, okay? Because I pushed that consumer into that payment. With this precise price, if you want a $500 payment, you'll get it. It will adjust everything else. And if you realize that you can't put that much down and you're at $500, well, guess what? You're going to pick a different vehicle.
Yeah.
Right?
How many of the dealerships these days have that precise price tool available to them?
So the dealer industry is calling this digital retailing, and there are probably 3 or 4 companies out there, but it's a very low adoption rate, right? It's probably something that came out last year, and more dealers are adding it to their website. The future of this will be the 11th step or the 12th step would be actually making a purchase online for the car and coming in and picking up the car. And that's going to be a change, I think, for dealers. A lot of dealers aren't really welcoming that because they still have always been taught that in order for somebody to buy a car, I got to get them in the car. We got to test drive it. That's when the consumer feels that ownership, like it can imagine that they're driving it. If we're just talking about price and you've never gotten the car, you don't see the value. It's going to be always harder. So that's one of the reasons why dealerships, when you call and ask for the best price, they're trying to get you into the store. One, because it's easier to sell you and you can't just shop them. But there is an important part of the car buying process of where you're in the car test driving it and you feel it, and that's where you make the connection with the car.
Yeah.
So once you make the connection with the car and we've decided that's the car, then we can adjust the price. So knowing that the consumer, if they realize that the down payment and the monthly payment are too high, they can pick a lower model, right? When you walk into the dealership and you're doing the car buying process and I'm $200 over, you're going to just keep trying to go down and down. And it's hard for me to say, look, we're looking at the wrong vehicle, right? And so when we go back to some other things that we've talked about already with, with the marketing and things like that, so often are we letting the customer choose the vehicle that they want. We're allowing them to choose the payment that they want. And a lot of times those don't match. So with the technology, I'm going to market to vehicles that I think that I can get you into, right? It's a fair price that are in your budget, where I'm not trying to sell you the bells and whistle one when your budget is a lot lower, right? And one of the other tools that we have that technology that we have that the dealerships are using is called equity mining, which we kind of just start. So this is that was a long answer to the first part, but the second one is equity mining, and what that does is that looks at the data of your previous car that you bought, the selling price, the monthly payment, how many payments you may have any payments you have remaining, your trade value, and allows to see if you're in an equity position or not.
Now, this from a customer standpoint, though, you have to make sure that I, as a customer, did business with that particular dealership, right?
Yep.
Like if I got an Audi and I'm looking at a Mercedes, and even let's just say hypothetically the Mercedes is in the same dealer group, is that information shared between?
And so again, the benefit to both the dealer and to the consumer by being loyal and being able to come back to that dealership is they have access to that information. So they can calculate those payments. If you're interested to buy a car right now and you call somebody and you say, hey, what's a payment on this particular vehicle? They're going to tell you a payment, but they don't know if you're in an equity position. They don't know what your trade's worth. And a lot of times if you just call the dealership right now, very rarely do they ask if they have a trade, how many payments, what's their equity. A lot of times they don't even know that, okay? If you have to ask the average consumer how many payments they have in their equity or how many payments they have left, they wouldn't be able to know that. So by going back to the dealership that you bought the car, they have that information, and now I'm more accurately able to give you a price. Now, that price is actually better because as a dealership, it allows me to have exclusivity, because when a customer submits a lead via an internet lead, it's going to 3 or 4 dealers, and usually it's whoever's the lowest. So if the dealership can use the data and reach out to the customer before they submit a lead, and I can provide you with a $500 payment, the customer is going to be a smart consumer and is going to start shopping around. They're only going to get $700 payments because the reason is they don't know that customer is in an equity position, and I do. So 2 great examples of, right, 1, just using the data, and then 2, creating that opportunity to have a loyal customer because it's going to benefit them, it's going to benefit me, and I can use that money and put it into a down payment and, maybe get a nicer car or lower their payment. And so again, I'm improving the overall experience.
The idea of building the relationship and then also having that data available to bring the customer back assumes that they're happy with the car as well.
Yeah.
Do you have some feedback on data, or do dealerships get that data around how many people kind of come back and want the same car? So like me, for example, I find that, if I'm getting out of a car, it's probably because I want to get into a new kind.
Yep.
And so I may just go a different direction altogether. And even if I had a great relationship with my last dealer, it's about the car.
Yeah. So I think the first example is, everybody wants the latest and greatest. So a lot of consumers, even in 2017, maybe don't have Bluetooth, right? I see them driving, holding their phones, right? That's a technology that people must have, right? Rear view cameras, vented seats, things like that. There's some really cool features. So if people are happy with their current car that they have, and then they can add those particular features because they like the car, it's been reliable, it's a very easy to upsell and get these new features. If it's something that maybe is different, like your lifestyle has changed, right? If I'm a younger guy, a sports car 2-seater, I get married and my wife gets pregnant, right? Obviously, I'm going to have to switch cars. It's going to be a little bit harder, but most dealerships sell, they sell sports cars to minivans, right? So there's an opportunity there. But there are a huge majority of people that are very loyal to their brands, right? You have people that will only buy a Ford and only buy a Chevy. And so a lot of that is because they are the same way that we go to, Marriott or different cards, it's the consistency. A lot of times when you're kind of bouncing around, it's the unexpected, you don't really know what to expect. So you want to make sure that you're having a good experience, but then going back to the car, cars are not perfect. They break down. And that's what's nice about having a new car is they have warranties. And, the other thing too is realizing that the dealership, if they do a good job on the sales side and can pass that to the service side, that relationship can continue. And so I tell dealers, when you sell a car, when you're in that waiting phase where you're waiting for everything to finish and you're going, through the car and you're programming the radio and you're giving them the owner's manual, to walk them over to the service drive and introducing them to a person so that they can make a connection. Say, hey, this is Bob. This is your service advisor. In 3 months, you need to come in for an oil change. This is the guy that you're going to see, right? And you kind of pass that off. Now, again, using the technology to better the experience, I'm going to have that customer go to my website right then and schedule their first service appointment. So one, it shows that they don't need to call, right? They can just go online. I show them how to do it. Now, when they set that service appointment, it's also sending a reminder to their phone. So they're going to get an alert and a reminder in iCalendar that says, hey, tomorrow is your appointment. It's also going to send a reminder to the sales rep. So the customer's coming in at 8, where should the salesperson be? He should be in the service drive saying, oh, hey, Dennis, you remember, how are you doing? How's the car? This is the opportunity to ask for a referral, right? Because the customer is like, man, he remembered me, right? I must have made an impression. Now, once we've passed that over to the service drive, the service person will see him every 3 months or 4 months every time he does an oil change. Historically, the dealership's only been focused on the sales side, who might not see that customer for another 3-5 years. So if the service drive can do a better job of carrying on that experience, one, when we get to the 5-year mark, he's more likely to come in and buy, but there's times that come up, right? My wife needs a new car, right? So if I offer a good experience there, right now I might be able to, I'm already having this communication every time that they come in. Hey, my wife is actually interested in a car. Let me show you what you have. If there's no connection there, there's no loyalty. So they might go look at another one. But if the sales rep's more involved on that, it will help. And then the other thing too, when you're talking about sales and service from a dealership, is majority of the time, those are 2 separate silos, right? They're very separate. And so that perfect example of, introducing the service is one thing, but the service side should be notifying the sales side anytime somebody comes in with a customer pay RO of a customer that's out of warranty, right? They're going to come in to service their vehicle that's out of warranty, probably going to be a $300-$400 RO. If that customer is in an equity position, why am I not getting them into a new car and saving that money? Again, something that they're not expecting, right? They're expecting when they pick up the car when it's finished that they're going to pay $500 that they weren't expecting. And the dealership says, hey, look, keep that $500. I notice your vehicle has some equity. I can get you into a brand new one, full warranty, has all the new features for maybe just $100 more a month.
Well, the issue there with, I think this goes kind of, this is a larger issue because this is really the battle between sales and service, because at the end of the day, every staff person at a dealership is a commission-based salesperson. So that means if service is, essentially not fulfilling their RO, or for those, for the layman out there, that's repair order, then that means that's money not in their pocket, that goes to sales. But I think the point is still made, and I think for all the listeners that are out there, hopefully you're getting a better understanding of how your data is being used by a dealership. You're looking on one end, the customer acquisition end. In the cases where Hunter's mentioning things like precise price, where you're submitting your information and a dealership's trying to get you into a car, to once the dealership already has your information, and now we're talking more about customer retention and them, a dealership passing your information to service and being able to essentially provide the customer experience. I mean, that's really at the end of the day what we're trying to advocate and serve for. Hunter, do you still have some time here?
I do.
Okay, because I want to talk about your photography business here, because I think that's actually super interesting here too. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back. This is the Wisco Weekly Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. listeners, if you were digging this first episode with Hunter Swift, we're not done just yet. Stay tuned for our Thursday episode, and we're going to learn more about Hunter and his side business and how he's been successful with his side business, and he's going to give us some tips and tricks on how he was able to build up his photography business. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up in part 2 of our Hunter Swift interview. Of course, as always, please rate, review, and subscribe, and check out our YouTube channel. And you can always go to Facebook, write us, ask us some questions. That's Wisco Weekly Pod on Facebook, and our website, wiscoweeklypod.com. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out on Thursday.